can understand why you might think I've just gone a little bit mad with this one, but I seriously believe that this Legends boy is back in the room. You don't have to take my word for it, just look what he's doing in WEC and what Mario Andretti's been saying about him. Now, okay, you might have wondered why I've been quiet regarding Mick Schumacher and F1 as of late, but the truth is, I had chosen to give my heart a rest on this matter. I'd practically given up all hope of there being a potential avenue of a return for Mick Schumacher because Audi looked like it had been cut off, Williams had been cut off, Alpine had been cut off, and then you get that whole spat with James Vowles and Corinna Schumacher about not being special, and then Toto Wolff basically saying, as much as I like you, Mick, there's not really a chance between you and putting Kimi in the car, sorry about that. But them's the breaks. However, one voice has come into play to offer Schumacher some hope. Mario Andretti has waded in again, much like how he's been lifting up the prospects of Sergio Perez as potentially the team's lead driver. Could Mick be his second, perhaps? Because during the Miami Grand Prix weekend, Mick was spotted at Cadillac's underwhelming F1 branding launch party, notably for the fact that everyone was expecting there to be a livery, and all we got was a logo. We didn't even get a hint of their colours. But reportedly, he was busy with the likes of GM and Mario Andretti in held private talks regarding the possibility of a 2026 return. And then when he wasn't doing that, he was a guest of Esteban Ocon's over at Haas during the Miami Grand Prix weekend, which must have been a little bit awkward considering that was the old stomping ground, but then again, it's a completely different beast of what it was 3 years ago. Anyway, German and Spanish outlets say he is now one of the names that General Motors is actively evaluating for next year's entry, alongside more seasoned F1 racers like Checo and Bottas. This is a change of tone from back at the end of last year, when mention of Mick's name was part of Andretti keeping all options open. The idea of a lineup wasn't really much of a priority, but now in the last few months, especially in the last few weeks, the options have been whittled down a little bit, and now Mick, within the last few days, has suddenly become a really compelling option to the point where I feel confident enough of speaking his name on the channel again. It's crystallising into something tangible, which may mean I don't need this. Now, granted, Mick is still one of many names that Mario Andretti is touting as to potentially be one of their initial lineup for next year. And to be fair, I would believe the likes of Mario, since not only he is a member of the board for the Formula One team, but he is also their appointed talent scout. A former world champion, he does have an eye for spotting talent, and many people will be thinking, well, surely it's obvious, Law. Surely he would go for the likes of Colton Herta, who in many publications is touted to be effectively the successor to Mario Andretti, the 78 world champion, seeing a lot of himself in the young Herta. There are many publications with them together, beaming like Cheshire Cats, and he is one of the lead drivers for Andretti's IndyCar division, so surely if they also want to have an American driver in on their lineup for their first season in Formula One, Herta would be their guy. However, things have taken a little bit of an unfortunate turn in the last couple of events, and right now, Colton Herta is not likely to pick up the super license points required unless he gets a butt-ton of FP1 sessions, which I don't see happening, because a disastrous 25th place finish at Indianapolis recently just dropped him to barely in the top 10. He's going to need to get back up into the top 4. And quite honestly, I think he's just sick and tired of the F1 chatter, because this has been going on since 2023. I think he's just thinking either it's going to happen or it doesn't happen, and then go on to focus on his IndyCar career and try and win multiple Indy 500s perhaps. And it's also worth noting that Graham Loudon, who is going to be the team principal for the Cadillac F1 team, has gone on record many times that, sure, having an American driver on their books is something that they would like to have, but any driver that would be racing for them would have to earn that seat on merit. They wouldn't just give the seat to an American just for the sake of it, for patriotic, clout or something like that. Because Honda learnt that the hard way with Super Aguri by putting Yuji Ide in there. That was a textbook case of them just picking Ide because he was doing fairly well in Formula Nippon, and he was Japanese, and Honda wanted 2 Japanese drivers with Takuma Sato as the lead, so there you go. Right now, Herta is not looking like an option, and if he turns out not to be an option, they're not just going to try and find special dispensation or another American driver to get into bed with. They're just going to pick whatever's available, and someone who might have some experience in Formula One. They will look at all drivers that are available, the shortlist now having been whittled down somewhat since November. And I can imagine that some of you out there might get your foam out as well, saying that Graham Loudon is biased since he is Zhou Guan Yu's manager since he has been in F1. that he might get a leg up, and Ferrari might actually help him as well, since the marque is going to be giving them power units for a couple of years, and they are known for subsidizing their academy drivers with other teams. And to be fair, it would save Cadillac a few $100,000 in terms of a salary, but I doubt that Cadillac's really that bothered. They want to go all in and show that they can do this on their own. They do not need handouts. And from what I've seen from the Andretti project since Michael Andretti was leading it, look incredibly tight. As in, they're making the right moves. They have a Silverstone base. They are picking people who have a storied time within Formula One. They are sniffing in the right directions in terms of picking people who actually know a thing or two. They're not doing a Toyota, where they're just sticking people in who have done some sort of motorsport, like rallying, and thinking, oh, that can easily be transitioned into Formula One. It can't. General Motors isn't just walking blindly into this. They've done their homework. And yes, I'm just going to put the picture on the screen right now because many people are just going to be responding to this video with that particular photo. Yes, that one from Monaco with Mick's car in half, which is it's designed to do, like Romain Grosjean's did. So yeah, you probably got your phones out right now saying, nah, mate, nah, were you not paying attention to what was happening in Formula One at that time? Well, yes, but have you been paying attention to what's been going on in the World Endurance Championship? If you haven't, you should keep watching. Performance, yeah, it was a key issue. I'm not going to lie. Mika Häkkinen and other people have pointed out that mixed crashes and inconsistency in the first half of the season left Haas with less confidence in his progress. And honestly, the numbers were damning. Magnussen with slightly more than double of what Mick was able to score, showing a real clear gap in performance. Austria, being Mick's standout, denied a shot at maybe something more by team orders. And if you were around, you saw it too, right? That there was that flicker, that flame of the old Michael Schumacher, the anger in his eyes. And ultimately, he came away with a P6, which was compounding on the P8 he had at the British Grand Prix the previous weekend. There was momentum here. It looked like finally he cracked it. But ultimately, it fizzled out, and in my honest opinion, it was not entirely his or Kevin's fault. And simply you can attribute it down to the very unorthodox section of that particular vanguard. The way Haas worked under Steiner, upgrades were saved for big one-time events, not incremental updates, to save costs, and in Steiner's justification, to better understand parts they already had, preventing themselves going down a rabbit hole of development, something which Aston Martin can easily be attributed to the last couple of years. I wonder if that will happen again. But how can they make a tractor even more of a tractor? A bigger tractor? The numbers tell the tale. At the Austrian Grand Prix in July, Kevin had 22 points, Mick had 12. By the time you get to the season's end, Magnussen had only scored 3 more, Schumacher still on 12. Any sign of a skill issue from their drivers can easily be explained by the fact of an ultra-conservative upgrade plan, which was basically, I think, a one and done, maybe an Austin update, but in comparison to all the other teams, no. Haas completely blew their advantage of sacrificing 2021, getting ahead with 2022, because that car initially looked fairly developed, and then they just completely lost momentum. So how could Mick try and make up in the second half of the season all the damage that he admittedly caused in the first half? There was no way. It was impossible. All because Gunther just wanted to break from the norm and try and cut costs. And what also didn't help is that Mick was slowly losing the backing that helped get in that seat in the first place. The Ferrari relationship, oh, that was cooling down considerably. I believe a driver's motivation thrives when they feel genuinely wanted, not just valued for sponsorship perks or having a famous name. Let's be real. I think Haas plumped for Mick mainly for the fact that Ferrari would pay half of his salary, and maybe have some other perks attached, masked by the fact that Mick had won the 2020 F2 Championship. And quite frankly, it just proved that this choice of Ferraris to stick him in the Haas was a misguided one. They should have stuck him in with Kimi Räikkönen for 2021, and then, yeah, Kimi would have just said, oh, that Mick guy, he just reminds me of his father, he's alright guy, I guess, and I just want to have my drink, thank you very much. But yes, when Ferrari decided around the end of 2022 to stop their collaboration with Mick and the Driver Academy, that was pretty much it. And it didn't help that Steiner explicitly denied that Mick's sponsors 1&1 actually would help him secure a seat. Steiner claiming that 1&1 was a sponsor of the team, not Mick specifically. It meant that he lost both Mick technical support and political clout, especially when Mattia Binotto pulled the plug on him. And that means that pretty much Steiner and Briatore have a lot in common. They are bean counters. They do not want to lose money. And Mick was losing them a lot of money, but unfortunately, the car was not being developed in a conventional way to allow Mick the chance to make up for it, and the same went for Magnussen, albeit to a lesser extent. But then you might easily say, well, wait a minute, the whole thing with Ferrari was a mutual decision, right? That Mick and Ferrari decided to cut ties. Well, At the same time, I could easily sense that Ferrari were not that particularly motivated to keep him around since, well, there was nothing really for him in Formula 1, and I doubt that he was wanting to get out of world endurance at that time, in 2022. And you've got to look at what the situation was going on with Ferrari. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, they were going fairly well. They were fairly solid in their uptick. They were getting on famously, so there was no need to replace them. And then you've got to look at what was going on in the junior scene with Oliver Behrman. Him coming up through the ranks, 2023, his F2 campaign was pretty solid. And what would have helped is that he would have had the backing of Aventum, which is a company owned by Oliver's dad. So he did have a little bit of money helping him out as well, whereas Mick had none of that. So yeah, put simply, by the end of 2022, Schumacher's support structure other than his family had completely collapsed. So what could he do? There was no way he was going to survive another year. Had he still remained with Ferrari, he might have just been able to hang on one more year. Law, you're not really trying to sell Mick's case here. You're not really helping. Look, I know. I am just trying my best to look somewhat balanced. That I'm not completely off my rocker with this. That there is a reason why I'm trying to temper myself and show that, yeah, there was a lot of rough with the smooth. A lack of sponsors and support, I think it would matter less for the likes of Cadillac. As a fully backed manufacturer entry, Cadillac can afford experienced drivers who may not bring a budget of their own. Thus, the same qualities that hurt Mick, no big-name sponsors, become less relevant. What matters more is track performance and team fit, areas in which Schumacher has markedly improved in. And if Perez joins and is used to boost GM's marketing push into Mexico, as well as its push in EVs in the region, then Mick's work ethic and reliability and recent form in world endurance could be exactly the perfect balance that Cadillac needs with Sergio. Because for those of you who haven't been paying attention and have just been recycling the same Mick shoe crasher memes time and time again every single year since 2022, he has been very, very busy, aside from him being an apprentice and the shadow of Toto Wolff behind the scenes in certain races. He has done a fair lick of service for Mercedes, doing a lot of testing for them, arguably helping a double podium with the W14 in a year which could easily be described as not very fun for Mercedes. But he's also been switching up his management team, much like how Yuki Tsunoda has been changing up his management to help better position him to try and find a career outside of Honda's wheelhouse. With the appointment of Dirk Muller to his crew as a consultant, a winner of Le Mans in 2016 and a regular podium occupier there as well, his public remarks, Muller, frame Mick as a driver whose strongest selling point is sheer application, resilience, elbow grease, and the willingness to learn have become the core of the comeback story. Muller right now is performing the perfect pitch for Mick Schumacher, saying he's a man that's only looking forward, that he's much further along than he was when he was last in Formula 1, that he soaks everything up like a sponge, that he has what it takes to survive the shark tank of Formula 1. Ooh, these are really good buzzwords, I like it. But that is pretty much the main argument that Muller is pointing out, because yes, the truth of the matter is that Formula 1 requires money. It requires De Niro, and Schumacher's camp still does not have that. But I don't think for Cadillac that really matters, because Mick's team is repositioning him from the gifted but fragile rookie that Haas had into a blue-collar worker who will grind for results and development miles, somebody who could be perfect for a team such as Cadillac, keen to make a good impression, and of someone that will put in the hours as they build something brilliant together. And I think it would actually be quite an immense lineup and an incredibly motivated one, because sure, Checo does have a point to prove the Red Bull doubters wrong, that they were playing silly buggers with his contract, but he also comes with a lot of marketing power that I think he is more than happy to utilise, because it does mean that he has now become a multi-millionaire. No criticism there. He's making good of what he's got. But to be fair and be somewhat of a devil's advocate regarding a Perez-Schumacher lineup, there could easily be some situations where a misinterpretation of their certain roles could be a factor and could cause them to rub up against each other. Because I think Checo, he would definitely want to be the team leader, which might or might not sit well with a prideful Schumacher. Ultimately though, as a long-term mentor Sebastian Vettel and his most recent Toto Wolff have noted, what matters most for Mick is that he's given the right environment to thrive in. So therefore, if Cadillac does take up both Sergio and Mick, they need to immediately declare what their roles are. Who is the top banana and who is expected to be their wingman? They would also need to make sure that both of them were on the same page when it came to car setup, because that, I think, is a topic that Sergio Perez fans and Checo himself are particularly sensitive about. That his words and feedback will be taken seriously, and that hopefully Mick can keep up with him and work well with it. Which, to be fair, in World Endurance, you have to pilot the same car with two other drivers, you have to have some sort of synergy there, and a bit of flexibility. And yes, there is no public evidence to really say how Checo and Mick would get on, because they were in two different worlds in their time in Formula 1. Checo was up there with Red Bull, fighting it for constructors' titles. Mick was down in the backmarker midfield pack. But there are several insiders out there that claim that both men are very professional and very adaptable. They're flexible, including the feedback that we got from Jonathan Wheatley recently regarding the likes of Sergio, which may suggest that they could easily get on with each other if they are fighting the same cause. And I would liken this situation to what we're seeing at Williams right now. Sure, Williams is a legacy team, but as far as I'm concerned, they're a brand new outfit. They have changed considerably since their legacy operation back in 2020. It's completely different, save for them using the same factory. The facilities, gone, completely overhauled. Carlos and Alex, they've got a point to prove to people who doubted them. And I think that the same thing will apply to the likes of Checo and Schumacher. And again, for those of you who have just been thinking that Mick Schumacher was that same guy in 2022 and then completely disappeared, as you might have been seeing the last few weeks, he's been taking names. He's been very busy with Alpine and World Endurance and making it as part of his own number 36 crew, an Alpine outfit that looks good. One that actually works together. Because this year he is fully committed to World Endurance. He's not doing double duty with Mercedes, because he's been hammering out results with 2 podiums out of 3 races alongside his teammates in Italy and Belgium, with Spa showcasing his speed especially, with him securing the second fastest time during the 6-hour race, missing out on the fastest lap from a Ferrari by around a tenth of a second, in an Alpine, powered by Mecha Chrome, which went bang at Le Mans last year. Being second fiddle to the likes of Ferrari, who are on a roll at the moment in World Endurance, that's no mean feat. And this is just a real big sign that the momentum for Schumacher is building. His stock is rising, and the timing couldn't have been better. These back-to-back podiums around the time where in the next couple of months Cadillac will be finalising their driver lineup, it's absolutely perfect. They will remind decision makers like Mario Andretti that he is race sharp, technically versatile, and still a box office draw. And when you couple it with the comments that he was saying supporting his teammates and the constant feedback we're seeing from other people saying he's a good egg, he works really hard, I've got no complaints about him, then it's just standing to reason that you need a driver who you not only want, but somebody who will work for you tirelessly, relentlessly. Recall all the stories that his father Michael was the first one in, the last one out. He'd be driving that F1 car at night if he could, which he actually did, and with no headlights or anything like that. A maverick, crazy. We are seeing that, albeit slightly tamed for, this day in health and safety. Mick still got it. He is accomplished, and as far as I'm concerned, if I were a Formula 1 manager, I would have Mick on my team. And I don't care what you say. You may think I'm being biased, but I don't give a damn on this one. Because you've got to look at what his father did when he did his 3 years with Mercedes. Sure, it only amassed 1 podium and a provisional pole before he got that 5-place grid drop because of the Bruno Senna incident, which admittedly in Spain was absolutely dreadful. Very low-tier Schumacher at that moment. But he put in the effort. He helped lay the groundwork after the Brawn situation, then Mercedes rebuilding in 2010, and by the time Lewis Hamilton comes along, the team are ready to go for titles. We saw that in 2014 with Lewis and Nico, what they were able to do. Michael, Ross, Toto, they helped build that legacy ready for those glory years. Oh, here's the Mick glazing, I hear you say. And I was also thinking that, well, why didn't Alpine snap him up for 2025 then? Or maybe for 2026 if they're looking for drivers who are dedicated and committed in their rebuilding phase. Especially since I now think my high-tech theory is completely out the door. Apparently there might have been something to it after all. But I think it would have been safe to say that there would have been words exchanged between the two departments, F1 and WEC, the Renault group. They would have been keen to gain some good press and hard-working drivers, considering recent events. And for those of you who have been long-term subscribers to this channel, and if you are not already, I really think you should subscribe for more of these, and you can actually wait around and stick to see whether I'm right or wrong on things. My theory about Mick landing in an Alpine F1 seat via Toto, that failed to materialise, but I'm seeing more by the day as to why, this wouldn't have worked out, especially with Flavio around. He won't bring Mick into the team because the team already has someone like Pierre Gasly tied down as a leader. Him, Pierre, having star power of his own. Also, it has become increasingly obvious, painfully so, that second seat is not fit for Mick Schumacher because that is the rookie seat and it's on rotation at the moment. As far as I'm concerned, Franco Colapinto might get 5 races. This might all be a play, an excuse to make Jack Doohan's dismissal not look so bad because they're being tried out. We might get Paul Aron from the British Grand Prix onwards through Monza, and then in time for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Briatore would have made their decision, and whoever gets that seat will then get it for the rest of the season. And maybe going into 2026, who knows. But I think it is up between 3 drivers, Aron, Colapinto and Doohan. So yeah, no room for Mick in all of that, and quite frankly, I just think he should just avoid that team like the plague, especially considering that the relationship between the Briatore and Schumacher family has always been a little bit rocky ever since Michael moved over to Ferrari. Flavio has not forgotten that. He is still quite bitter about that 30 years hence. And Ralf Schumacher has been very scathing regarding Flavio as of late, especially with the whole Oliver Oaks thing. And on top of that, let's not forget, Briatore's priority right now is counting the beans, cash flow. Mick, like I said earlier in the video, does not have that. So he would be no good to Flavio anyway. Now, I'm not saying this means that Mick Schumacher is blacklisted from all teams. It just means that he is not a fit for where Alpine is going right now, especially them probably having to change tack now the whole Oaks high-tech thing behind the scenes might have gone completely up in smoke. And then there is the matter of his current World Endurance gig, because I've seen many punters out there, amidst all these Cadillac F1 rumours, proclaiming like, "No, Mick, don't go back! You're on a roll here! You are so good!" And considering how World Endurance is standing amongst the global motorsport fandom, it's only growing with more and more big-name teams and manufacturers jumping on board. Also, Mick has said more than once that F1 is his goal, his main priority, and that he's prepared to wait for the right opening rather than settle for a career in sports cars alone. Sure, some people may be thinking then, oh, well, Mick in WEC, oh, he's distracted, he's not got his eyes on the prize, he's phoning it in, oh, come on. Yeah, you could easily say that maybe in 2024, him hoping that he would get a Mercedes call-up, which he then didn't because Kimi Antonelli is a thing, and he's now taking names at the moment, and we're only a quarter of the way through the first season of his. Now, though, he's fully focused on World Endurance, and look what he's doing right now alongside his crewmen. The fact of the matter is, though, is that Cadillac is providing him a return to a sport that Mick didn't want to leave in the first place. He got booted out against his will. And Cadillac, for its part, needs a hungry and passionate driver, one who's prepared to put in the time and effort. And hey, having a superstar surname wouldn't go amiss either. Even though it's going to be a calculated risk, I think their goals are aligned at the moment. It all works, it fits. And all of these pictures seeing Mick Schumacher with a big cheesy grin, he's happy about something. And I think maybe this is the something. Because I think that maybe if it doesn't work out and he doesn't get this gig, he can easily go back to World Endurance and have himself a fairly solid career. Maybe a couple of big name wins and maybe a victory at Le Mans eventually, which is going to be very important. Next month, what takes place? The 24 Hours of Le Mans. If Alpine can make good progress like they did this year and last year, I think that they could easily give Mick Schumacher a platform in which to really stamp down with the Andrettis and Cadillac and General Motors that he is the real deal. If by some miracle he and his crew go on to win the Le Mans, oh, I think it would be a done deal. Even if he can get a solid top 5 finish, it'd be something. Heck, if he can just cross the finish line after all of those hundreds of laps, that'd be better than nothing. He would move from an outsider to almost practically a dead cert next to Checo. But even though I have told you all of that, I am still so incredibly wary. I have been burnt so many times. I don't want to go through this all over again, but it's all stacking up at the moment. I can't help but now feel cautiously optimistic again. That maybe this is all working out. That Cadillac are going to be getting themselves a very dedicated second to Checo, his star power, and his own capable talents, and of course him being the tyre whisperer, maybe at a team that will maybe listen to his technical feedback. And even if Cadillac doesn't choose Mick, his resume right now, because of what he's doing in World Endurance, is a far bigger glowing statement than it was just a couple of years ago. He has talent, he has potential, at a team that values him. Haas did not value him. They only saw him for his money and potential sponsorship clout, which then fizzled out, and they kicked him to the curb. And then making people joke about him that he just simply didn't belong in Formula 1. Much like how, in my honest opinion, these 10 men did not belong in Formula 1. But instead of just calling them the worst drivers through stats alone, I chose vibes as a big factor. To find out who I think are the 10 least compatible drivers for Formula 1 life, watch this video next, straight after this one.